If you haven't been following Assassin's Creed Shadows, understandable. There's been a lot of culture war, a lot of controversy. It's been quite the shit show, to say it in the least bit. And the game is coming out very, very soon. And Ubisoft is prepping for the essential shit show of the launch. In fact, they've made an anti-harassment plan for Assassin's Creed Shadows. And this is to protect the development team in the wake of consistent backlash, apparent anti-woke, anti-DI content creators, their followers, and some of the series' player base. Now, whether you agree with Ubisoft or you hate what they've done, targeting developers is always a bad thing. Target the CEO, target the shareholders, the corporation itself, but the developers themselves should not really be targeted. Now, that goes out the window when you as a developer start shit-talking the players. If you go on Twitter, or you go on Reddit, or you go on an interview or a forum or anything, and you start shit talking the players saying, go fuck yourself, don't buy the game, or anything of that nature, you're void of that protection and that ethical thing of leaving the developers alone. And that's what Assassin's Creed and Ubisoft has learned, is that when you tell people, if you don't like the game, go fuck yourself, these people are going to make it their sole life mission to make the game flop. And seeing how they've been successful with so many other games and considering change and making the company lose hundreds of millions and just straight up flopping, companies now actually have to take serious consideration to the intent of their player base. Now, a lot of the negativity was in regards to Yasuke, a historical figure, and I'm not going to really talk about the historicalness of his figure. There's both pros and cons in regards to his verifiability and his significance in Japanese culture, at least in the time period that's being portrayed. This is not a culture war video, I don't give a shit, I'm not even going to play Assassin's Creed Shadows, but the news is important to cover. Now, going back to what they said about the anti-harassment plan, this is the quote. We're advised not to post on social media that we work at Ubisoft to avoid harassment. And these are machine translations from French interviews, because Ubisoft is a French company. And it's an initiative from Canada. There's a team that monitors networks and acts quickly in the event of a targeted attack. Unlike what we've had before, this is serious. Reportedly, messages posted by internet users on X, formerly Twitter, Reddit, or even videos on YouTube will be closely monitored by a dedicated unit in order to respond quickly to the slightest problem. Lawyers are ready to file complaints in the event of proven harassment. So if you just make a critical video, hypothetically this one is slightly critical, Ubisoft could send a lawyer or a legal team after you to take your video down, or take your article down, or take your X post down. And continuing on this interview, our stance has always been that team member social media channels are their own. Our top priority is the safety of our employees, including online, which is why as a standard practice across Ubisoft, we offer guidance on navigating social media, digital safety, and support for team members' well-being. We also share resources to help prevent and protect against online harassment, something our teams have unfortunately faced. Now, this plan to protect Ubisoft, it's understandable considering the ginormous amount of backlash they've faced from Assassin's Creed Shadows. And if you haven't followed the news on top of that, they've effectively changed Assassin's Creed Shadows, whereas Yasuke now used to be one of the central figures and you could swap between Nae and Yasuke as much as you wanted, back and forth, left and right. You can no longer do that. It takes about 5 hours if you're speed rushing through the game to about 15 hours to unlock Yasuke. They've effectively removed them from the core part of the game, and aside from the 15-20 minute intro at the beginning, Yasuke is now somebody you unlock much later in the game. They've seen the backlash and negativity, and whether it's justified or not is irrelevant. They saw that and they changed the game. They've even changed how they're handling online media, essentially silencing the developers to stop talking online, and that Ubisoft's PR team handled this entire situation. So if we look at Video Gamer, which goes over their review of the game and how long it takes to unlock Yasuke, you can see this. Assassin's Creed starts with Yasuke, and then after the short cutscene, the game immediately cuts to Nae for the extended tutorial and the hours of gameplay and cutscenes until you actually unlock the second playable character. And based on the game, it does seem somewhat jarring because of the huge marketing push of Yasuke and Nae together. Now, I'm not saying her name correctly, I apologize, it's Naui, I think, or Nae. I apologize ahead of time. Since the very beginning, Shadows has been pushed as a joint story where players can choose when and where they play as either character, and the game evolves, that does become the case, but that's not how it starts out. And as I mentioned, 5 to 15 hours to actually unlock Yasuke in Assassin's Creed Shadows. And they've said before, based off not direct quotes, but what they've said in interviews and things of that nature, You'd be able to unlock every achievement in one playthrough, and you could alternate and do the game as either Naoi or Yasuke. That is no longer the case. And now we move on to IGN. Now, IGN doesn't have the best reputation when it comes to gaming articles or reviews. They typically give very high scores to even games that are rather poor. And in this context, they gave Assassin's Creed Shadows an 8 out of 10. I'm not going to read the entire article. If you do want to see that, there'll be a link down below. You can go and check it out directly. But I'm going to read the highlighted quote they have. The story is organized in a way that can be enjoyed in pieces and at your leisure without getting too lost between plot points. The story overall is paced similar to Valhalla, where the cardinal reason to be in each of the 9 regions of the map is to play through a mostly self-contained chapter. That said, Shadows does a better job of making sure at least some story elements and characters don't just completely vanish when you leave a region the way they did in its predecessor. Not every new lord or businessman you meet becomes completely irrelevant after you've solved their problems. So they've improved on the game, and based on what I've seen on multiple reviews, in terms of raw gameplay, Assassin's Creed Shadows is one of the best Assassin's Creeds ever done. It's incredibly well done. The pacing, the combat, the movement, the fluidity. The game feels drastically better, on top of carrying the story over from zone to zone and story to story. So they've done a lot of major improvements to make Assassin's Creed Shadow a genuinely better game. And if the game didn't have the controversy it did, had it been set with just a regular Japanese male character or anything else that wouldn't have targeted the culture war crowd and situation, this likely would have been one of the most hyped games on the planet, probably selling multiple millions of copies, maybe even 10 plus, just based on the region it's in Japan alone. So it is quite sad to see the state that Assassin's Creed Shadows has fallen into, that the game is effectively for the most part neutered, and even with the great positivity it's getting, this game will likely not sell even a fraction of the copies it would have been slated to sell if it had not been one of the major targets of the online culture wars. I felt compelled to just ride through the countryside and genuinely explore. Again, like I said, they've made the map better, they've made the world better, they've made the experience better. The game, through and through, feels amazing to experience and enjoy. Every footage, every review, every video showcases just how amazing Japan looks in this feudal era, which then transitions into the game not just looking amazing, but your character and the cosmetics also being such. I was absolutely flooded by the cosmetics I unlocked just in the natural course of completing tasks and looting. Now, like I said, you have a hideout, which is the same thing as Valhalla's, the Ravensthorpe settlement. In Assassin's Creed Shadows, it is a straight improvement on every step. But they already know ahead of time the game is going to get obscene hate. Whether the hate is justified or not is completely and utterly irrelevant. This game is going to have hate, whether it's good or it's bad. If it's bad, the hate's going to be much more vitriolic and much more negative and much more heavy-handed. If the game is good, they're going to nitpick anything that is even remotely bad and drive that home. There is no universe in which Assassin's Creed Shadows gets to be a good game because of how it launched, how they talk to people, how they explain it to people. When the game came out with Yasuke at the front and people complained that why was there a black samurai, one of the only few black characters in Japan's history as one of the main characters for a Japanese-based Assassin's Creed, they were essentially told, go fuck yourself, chud. If you don't like the game, don't play it. This is a game for the people, not you. And then that led to, as everybody is well aware, the massive, terrible backlash that just straight up neutered the game beyond measure. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like Assassin's Creed Shadow has no flaws. It does have its negatives. It's an Assassin's Creed game. It's rather generic. No matter how much you improve on the formula, at the end of the day, it is still an Assassin's Creed game that does have the same generic problems that even Valhalla, Odyssey, and every other Assassin's Creed game has. You can only do the same game type over and over again before it becomes repetitive. But there is a step in the straight positive in what they've done with Assassin's Creed Shadows. And I'm ignoring IGN's review for the most part. Their 8 out of 10 is irrelevant to this. They give high scores to a lot of games. Most reviewers say this game is relatively good. Even people that are negative have to praise the positives in this game. Overall, if I had to give this game a fair assessment without having played it yet because the game's not out yet, I would say this game is a 7.5 out of 10. Parts of the game are a 6 out of 10, even a 5. Parts of the game are a 9 out of 10. But it levels out at around a 7-ish out of 10, and that's where most people are going to see this game fall. A decent, fun experience that you can pick up and then when you're done, put down. Now, if you go into this with a negative mindset, it's going to be a much worse experience. You're going to rate it a 5 out of 10. You're just not going to really enjoy it. And that is fair. But this game isn't going to be a terrible Assassin's Creed game, so long as you can avoid the culture war stuff. And Ubisoft and other companies going forward, you have to understand that even if you think the culture war stuff is BS, with the way the world is right now, with the way people are, you gotta give the people what they want. And if they don't want to deal with things that they think is inaccurate in historical or unhistorical in this context, don't put in the game. Give them the kind of game that they really want. And people will not criticize it. If you give people even one thing to latch onto, they will latch onto and destroy your game and tear it apart. Think of the future. Ubisoft can't take many risks. Ubisoft is on the point of bankruptcy, so this game has to do good, has to sell well, and has to be amazing. And honestly, I don't see Assassin's Creed Shadows saving Ubisoft. I see Ubisoft being dissolved and sold for parts to multiple different companies in the near future. So thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you hated it, understandable. Dislike and subscribe so I can get my next video too. Thank you all. Ebenhard out. Peace.